Hey everybody, welcome to the Horror Syndicate, Horror Movie Madness. Sorry for the late start. Um, I was trying to deal with the website, thehorrorsyndicate.com. Welcome to the show. We're talking about an American Werewolf in Paris. I hope you stay after the intro. This movie I know is not very well received by very many people. It's extremely dated. I watched it last night, and I don't have many nice things to say about it. I will say the comedy doesn't land. The effects are awful. The acting is bad. The editing is really bad. Um, this movie, I'm so confused as to how they were able to take a movie like An American Werewolf in London, a legendary, iconic werewolf horror movie comedy, and in 1997, 16 years later, this is what they came up with. It's awful. This could have been a long-lasting franchise, and I think An American Werewolf in Paris killed any chance of any other movie ever being made that starts off with An American Werewolf in. Because there could have been other countries. Who knows? There's. I think the possibilities are endless. An American Werewolf in Canada. um, but I'm going to bring in Seth, who is our resident werewolf expert, and we'll get his take on this movie. Um, Kind of want to jump right into this one. Let's talk about, if you don't mind, a little bit of a recap, and I want you to be the Seth I know and love on this, if you know what I mean.
An asshole.
Give me a summary from the point of view of an asshole as I put Sean Sheridan's comments on the screen.
um, yeah, I mean, there's three Americans on a what they call a daredevil tour, and they go to Paris. They plan to jump from the Eiffel Tower, and while they're up there, there's a young woman named Seraphine who goes up to kill herself. The main character just suddenly just falls in love with her, like right off the bat, and he ends up
Love at
saving
first
her.
sight.
Yep. um, and then he begins to stalk her, and eventually finds her, and the three Americans are tricked into going to a party, and while they're there, werewolves attack, and the lead Andy is bitten, and yeah, that's about it. If I knew that you were gonna have me do the asshole thing, I probably would have tried to
Yeah, that
make
was
that a
kind
little
of
bit
off the
more of a
cuff. I
an
miss it.
asshole.
We talked about it a couple weeks ago, and I just
Yeah,
miss it. Um,
I
yeah,
I just keep forgetting about it.
yeah. Well, I mean, I don't forget that I'm an asshole. I look in the mirror and like, asshole. Uh, but yeah, so I have fond memories of this movie. I'll be completely honest. Like I've been kind of an American Werewolf in Paris apologist in a way, thinking like, yeah, it's not that bad. I know the CGI is bad, but fuck, man, this was really like I watched it in 2019. I must have been, I don't know what was going on in 2019 because the CGI effects are really bad. And who had the bright idea of letting the CG werewolf get wet? That was one of the worst mistakes in the whole movie. It was when it was cool, the idea of it jumping out of the fountain to kill the mom from Modern Family, but like it looked awful wet. It like in video games still to this day, it's hard to make things look good while they're wet. And so that's a difficult task,
yeah,
is when something gets wet digitally, it doesn't look right, and they did that. They went there. Um, I don't have much nice to say about this movie. And I hate to say that because, like I said, I remember this coming out shortly after I saw the original movie, and I was hyped for it. And all my friends went to the theater and saw it, and they loved it, you know. And it's like, cool, werewolf movie. We haven't seen many werewolf movies because I didn't know of Bad Moon at the time, but not many werewolf movies since early '80s, early mid '80s. And I was a big fan of Silver Bullet and had just seen and Howling actually, and just seen American Werewolf in London. So I was pretty hyped up about this one because I didn't like Wolf when I first saw it, with the Jack Nicholson movie. Um, I still haven't seen that in a long time. Not since the '90s, probably. But anyway, and I saw it and I liked it. But this movie has aged poorly, and I'm pretty lenient on editing in horror movies. But there's a scene where Seraphine and the main actor, who I can't remember his name offhand, um, is it Alex? No, that's not
Tom
right.
Everett Scott.
Yeah, Tom Everett Scott's character. I can never remember. I know the actor's name. Anyway, they're like they get back to the house
Andy.
after escaping the goons. Claude and his goons, and they're making out and getting hot and heavy. Then it cuts to Claude and them showing up. I'm like, whoa, that was a weird edit. You know, it's like, what the fuck is wrong with this movie? The CGI is awful, and it doesn't just start and stop at the werewolf. When they're on the Eiffel Tower, it's painfully obvious that they're not on the Eiffel Tower. I mean, they did a better job in 1970s with Christopher Reeve and Superman with the Eiffel Tower. I'm just saying. Speaking of Superman 2, will be on our next show on the Rage of Razor Retro Outsider show. Check it out. But this movie, and plus the acting is so fucking bad. It's some of the worst acting of the '90s, I think. Um, the score's not bad. The soundtrack's great. It has an excellent soundtrack, as we talked about. Bush's remix of Mouth is fantastic. Um, Julie Delpy, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. She was okay as an actress, but it's just not a good movie. I don't like it flat out. So I don't really have. I think the design of the werewolf could have been cool if the CGI was better. I will say that. Um, what? It's your turn.
Okay. Well, you said that you used to be an apologist for this movie. I still am. Now, I just want to point out, to be fair, this is a bad movie, and I do give it, I think, a very fair score for the type of movie that it is, for the quality of it. Um, but it's a movie that I kind of have fun with. I do revisit it more often than not. Um, Now, there's a lot of mistakes with this movie, first and foremost, and we can get into that. Last week when we talked about American Werewolf in London, one of the things I mentioned was the way that John Landis did the horror side of it, and the way he did the excuse me, the way he did the comedy side of it, where the comedy side was from the characters and the personalities, and it wasn't over the top goofy. It was more natural comedy coming from the characters. And when he did the horror stuff, the horror side was taken very seriously. I'm gonna pause right here. Am I coming through okay?
Yeah, perfect. You're perfect.
Okay. Well,
It's
okay.
no, it's very
I
odd
had like
because
the bars pop up, so I wasn't sure if I was.
no, last week you were having trouble at the beginning, and this is your favorite horror movie of all time. This week you got a very inferior sequel, and you're coming through perfectly. It makes total sense.
Yeah. Go go figure, right?
Right.
So going back to what I was saying though, is that this movie takes all the wrong lessons from the original, and it flips everything. So the comedy in this one is very slapstick. It's very goofy. And there's moments of it that still make me chuckle, but the comedy doesn't so much come from the characters and the personalities. Now it's more of a situational comedy. The example in the beginning when Andy saves Seraphine, and then he bungees back up, and you follow him until his head hits the plank. Um, so it's got that, and then when it gets to the horror stuff, it doesn't take the horror side very seriously. The horror side of it is very it's almost comedy. Well, not necessarily comedy, but it's like I don't know. It's more like '90s type of like post Scream type
Yeah.
horror, and like it's the werewolves never really feel threatening, and and again, I think what happened was is that the people that made this movie, they looked at the original and they just took all the wrong lessons. It's like all the people
Mm.
who really I've seen it quite a bit where people, talk about American Werewolf in London as being more funny than scary, and I don't get that. And uh, the because I don't think that the comedy in American Werewolf in London was overshadowed the horror at all. I think the horror was still very prominent and very much a bigger part than the comedy side of it. And people were like, oh well, it was funny, so we got to make this, we got to go out of our way to make this extra funny. um
And not good
yeah,
funny.
so right, well, exactly, and it's the difference in the writers, and in comparison to John Landis, I think, has um a natural knack for comedy and for characters and dialogue and stuff like that. Whereas these people, their only experience, it seems, with comedy is like everything has to be like slapstick, like Three Stooges level of comedy. So there's that. So I fully acknowledge that this is not a great movie. I mean, and I didn't even mention the CG because I think that's well documented, and
Yeah, for sure.
I always bring up in any type of conversation, in any argument about CGI versus practical, I bring up American Werewolf in London and Paris as examples of how a movie from 1981 can have a really terrifying looking werewolf, and then a movie like so many years later, the werewolves look like shit because they're CGI. Now, there are things though that I do like about this movie. Um, One of the things I do like is I appreciate that this isn't necessarily a retread of the original. So there's the same basic idea of Americans in a foreign country, fish out of water. One gets bitten, another killed, and the person who's inflicted with the curse now sees dead people in limbo, particularly their friend. That's
Hmm.
really where the two. That's really where the comparisons kind of stop. Like this movie, it does find its own. It does find its own footing as far as the story and characters go, where it's not retreading the original. It's not even trying to be the original. It's doing different things. And one of the things I do like is the inclusion of the character Claude, and who I think is actually a decent villain in the movie. I actually feel like Claude probably should have had a little bit more screen time,
Yeah, I
to
agree
kind
with
of
that for
maybe
sure.
further develop him a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so and I like the idea too that it's in the original it's just a man dealing with the fact that they're inflicted now, and whereas in this one you have that, but then you also have the additional thing where there's a pack of villainous uh, werewolves, and who found a way, through the formula from Surfing's stepdad. They can transform at any time, as opposed to the full moon. Um, so and I also like the fact that they like they trick Americans and people uh, visiting uh, the country into going to these parties so they can transform and feed. Um, so I like that whole aspect of it as well. But
The the idea that they can also there's a serum where they can shift at will was kind of cool. I like that idea as well. And I do like what you just
Yeah.
said about how they were getting Americans, which is kind of funny because the French hate Americans, um, into that little whatever that place was, and they're feeding on them that way. I do think that there are some cool elements. I will admit, but like there are glaring problems with this movie that just I'm watching it yesterday. I'm like, oh Lord, this is bad. Like even Reynolds was watching. He's like, was this movie ever good? I was like, yeah, I liked it once. But yeah, it just I was watching last night and I was not in a bad mood or anything like that. It just was not doing it for me, I guess, you know?
Yeah, well, like I said, it's not a great movie, but it's one that I think is not entirely awful either. And maybe it's just because I've seen so many werewolf movies. I've seen so many shitty werewolf movies where like this kind of feels like
That's
a
true.
masterpiece in comparison.
that's that's a good point.
Yeah, in
You're
comparison to like
desensitized.
all the ones that I've seen. Yeah, well, exactly. I've been desensitized. Um, and you know, I don't hate all the comedy in it. I mean, the slapstick comedy, I guess, works for the tone that they're establishing with this one. And when I do watch it, I, I I I do have fun with it, and I immediately separate it. You know, it's clearly inferior to the original. It's
Mhm.
not even close, you know. And
Not in the same
so I
ballpark.
yeah, and like I understand where some people can make the comparisons. I mean, even then, even tonight, I've made comparisons pretty much since we started, but I just I know what this film is. I know what this film isn't, and I can just kind of roll with what it is. It's not great, but there's an element to it that I think is kind of fun.
I could see that. I just last night I was watching. I was like, man, this is just rough to get through. And I don't know,
Yeah.
man. I do think for you, well, you're a big werewolf fan, where I am not as big of a werewolf fan. I like them. I'll take them where I can get them because their werewolf movies are kind of few and far between. Um, but for the mid '90s, where and again, if I'm not mistaken, we didn't get much as in the way of werewolf movies in the '90s. Am I wrong? You're the expert here. You would know better than I.
Well, I mean, like you mentioned, there was Wolf, there was um, uh, Bad Moon,
Yeah,
um,
which I didn't
Project
see
Metal
till not
Beast.
long ago. But I don't know. I
Um,
just it was disappointing watching. I mean, if you, I hate that. I would hate to even call it a sequel. That's why I put sequel in quotes on the Facebook post because there's really like you said like you even said there's no like connective tissue to an American Werewolf from London except for it's in Europe and there's werewolves and there was one other thing you said. What was that?
oh yeah, just the idea of the people who are killed by werewolves are in limbo.
Yeah, which I like.
Um,
That is one part I liked. I mean, their makeup effects looked like shit. I like their gashes. You could see where they
yeah,
stopped. They didn't look very good, but I did like the two characters they used. The mom from Modern Family, Julie something or other. Like when she tried blowing
yep.
her whistling and her eyeball popped out and showed from the point. I thought that was kind of cool. So there was a couple things here and there that I was okay with, but I don't know, man. This movie I was watching. I just could not like find anything I liked about it for the most part. Like there's a few little things here and there, but ah, kind of a turd overall,
The
if you ask me.
I think the one. comedy bit in it that I really like is when he's in the bathroom after he meets up with that chick and they're having their dinner, and he sees his friend
Mm-hmm.
pop up, um,
Mm.
through the fish platter. It's like, "You're
Mm.
dead. I saw them pull you out of the canal." And then he goes into the bathroom and you know he's like he's pissing and he's talking to his friend, and someone comes out of the stall as he's saying, the "I know you're dead and the police do too," and all this other, like, it was just I kind of like that whole moment. But yeah.
Okay, so I liked that moment originally. It was funny, but one thing that I realized when I was watching it last night was like, that guy's French. He probably has no clue what he just said.
It's true.
Like
Well, unless
that when I
he's
thought about that, I
unless
was
he's
like, nah, and I don't
maybe
want to take
he's a
that away from.
businessman who travels a lot.
Okay, yeah. Well, let's make up a backstory for the guys to make yeah. But that like when I don't know, man. I was kind of in dissect mode last night when I was watching it. Which is not something I normally do because that's just not something I do. That's Nate's job, really, to dissect something. But last night I couldn't help it. I
Well,
couldn't help myself. I mean, the thing is, like, I don't remember ever noticing uh, the Eiffel Tower scene is clearly blue screen or green screen or whatever it is, and it's really, really bad. Like I never noticed that before. I know when they're jumping off and everything, there's no way they did that from the Eiffel Tower, but I'm talking about when they're up there and he's preparing to jump and everything and putting the boot on and all that shit. It's the sky behind them and
it's
everything. It took me right out of it immediately.
yeah. Well, see, I never saw this in the theater, and
Neither did
a
I.
couple things there. A couple of things there is taken in the context of what things look like in '97
Yeah, that's true.
to a certain extent. Can't use that as a total excuse. But also the fact that now we're watching stuff like on big TVs now. Like when I first watched it, it was on VHS, 27-inch, box TV.
Dude, I was lucky if it was
But I
19
mean,
inch
even then, I
TV.
knew the CGI. Yeah, even then, you recognize that the CG is shit, and there should be no excuse for it because uh, uh, T2 is a movie where there's a lot of CGI effects that still hold up to this day. Um, but they just can't get it right with werewolves. I've noticed that with a lot of werewolf movies, when they use CGI, they just can't get it right.
Yeah, I mean, and I understand, especially back then. I think they've come a little long way. How far? I haven't been paying attention to the comments. I think right here, Big Bad Wolf. Seen that? Yeah, I don't know, man. Maybe I don't know. It's whatever it is. I just didn't enjoy it myself. Um, Joran mentioned that they need a North American Blu-ray release. I disagree. I don't think anybody needs to see this movie. No. Um, there are
I like
like
it for my.
yes, so yesterday, I don't know if anybody saw our short. There are like 10 places to watch this streaming online. So Peacock is where I watched it. What were you gonna say?
I would like it for my collection. I rely more on my physical media than I do streaming for stuff.
So the
So
reason I said it doesn't is
if I have
because
an opportunity to
I don't
watch
plan on
it,
ever
Blu-ray,
watching it again.
watch it on Tubi with ads.
I just don't think I'm gonna
Yeah, but
watch it ever
I do.
again.
I revisit it. Like
Yeah, and there are people like I believe Jordan likes it quite a
yeah,
bit. I
I
remember
understand. Yeah.
I forgot to ask that guy
Mhm.
that we know. I can't remember the name of that group. I'm gonna look. I'm gonna do it right now because I'm thinking about it.
You
I
gonna
know
ask
he's
for this
gonna
movie?
roll. Yeah, he probably has already. Then he has that long list, but I don't feel like looking at his list right now. You know what I'm talking about. You're in the group.
Yeah.
Because I would be happy with just that, honestly, if I was ever. Because yeah, I guess because I do have that great arrow set, and I believe you have it as well. Um, and
Hmm.
I would like a companion piece to go with that. I guess Scream Factory would be fine. But I don't know. I just I feel bad that like I was kind of stoked to watch it, and Reynolds was gonna watch it with me, and he's like, I'm out. I was like, all right, go ahead, we'll do something else. So that was kind of a shame. But let's go to slash score.
Yeah.
So this, like I mentioned in the beginning of the or on the short, the YouTube short or whatever the hell they're called, that it our followers did not give it that high of a score. Matter of fact, they gave it a 48%. Oh, what's going on with that lady's face down there in the corner? You see that? There's the real monster of the movie. Holy shit. 48%. So it's not very high. Uh, and I did not get a chance to read the comments to see why because it's way down on our page. But I would assume a lot of it has to do with the bad CG werewolves. I bet that's most people's chief complaint with the movie because there are redeemable qualities about this
Yeah.
movie that you've explained here. And I one thing was cool was a werewolf with no legs. That was kind of cool to see that whole scene in the basement where
Oh
the guy, of course,
yeah.
that was
Yeah.
in really good shape had to take his clothes off. Um, Objectifying men. How about that? But you gave this one a 53%, which I think is pretty decent for this movie. How'd you land on
Hmm.
that score? I know you probably don't have your full score on you, but what are some of your chief complaints, and what graded higher?
Well, I think nothing really graded very high for me when I did this. Uh, the
Actually, you know
writing
what?
and
It's not bad, isn't it?
directing and editing. Oh, is it?
I
Um,
think so. I'm gonna
the
look.
writing, directing, and editing. I don't believe I gave very high. I think a lot of stuff I kind of gave average for, because it's not like the worst filmmaking I've ever seen. And again, this could be just a thing with me because of how many bad werewolf movies I've seen. Really, a lot of poorly made werewolf movies. So,
Mhm.
I think probably around like an average, like five or whatever per. Um,
Almost. I'm looking at
Acting
it right
probably around the
now.
same. I think Julie Del. Oh, okay.
Writing, direction were fives. Acting, cast, editing, entertainment are six. Sound design and score, and then production design both seven. Cinematography is six also. Kills and effects are two. Totally, totally nailed those numbers, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think I gave entertainment factor a six because again, I do have fun with it, even though it's bad. I recognize it as bad. I recognize all the flaws. I recognize how they took all the wrong lessons from the original, and how they didn't take the horror side seriously. They made more slapstick comedy, all that stuff. I still kind of have fun with it. So yeah, so those were all my scores that you just read off, and that's why I settled on 53%, which I think is fair. And I don't hate the movie. I don't overly love it. I can't come here and just argue with people about and defend it. I can just say I kind of like it. So
Yeah. And everybody's entitled to their score. Damn it. I think I scratched the zit on my nose.
yeah,
Cool. That's the first time I've ever done that live. You can see it. Anyway, for me, I
true.
wasn't very nice about it. I gave it a 32%. It's, I mean, look at that picture. It just didn't do very well. I didn't
Yeah, it's
think it
so
was edited very well. I was not very much entertained by it. I felt that the three guys were very unlikable. Julie Delpy, is that how you say her name?
Yeah,
She was good. She was probably the
yeah.
best thing about it. I didn't really like Claude. This guy never wore a shirt. You know, he was always running around with like a cut off sleeveless fucking like shirt with it open in the front. It's like, what are you doing? Do people dress that way? I don't know. I'm not a fan
I,
overall. Our combined score ended up at 43% because of me, and I hate his friends, so I covered their faces with our faces. So there you
yeah.
go. Not as good as the predecessor in American Werewolf in London, which is legendary, of course. One of the best top, in my opinion, top 25 horror films of all time. I don't know where I'd put it, but I'm not going to say top 5 or 10 because I don't think it would be in mine. You probably would put it in the top 5, I'd say, right? Well, it's your favorite. So, yeah, it's the Die Hard of horror for you.
Jack, Meatloaf, I'm your wait night.
53, you dudes are generous. Yeah, that's the other thing. Rotten Tomatoes had a really low score. 7%. You don't see that very often. I think Friday the 13th Part 3, overrated movie, has a 7%, overrated by the fans, in my opinion. Um, yeah, I don't know. I I said at the beginning of the show that I think this killed any possibility of making another one. I don't know why they haven't made another American Werewolf in something. I don't ever want them to remake the first movie, but I'd like them to do more werewolf movies and maybe ones. I don't know why they haven't done anymore. Do you have any clue on that?
I don't know. I mean, like I mentioned last week, John Landis himself even wrote out a script or a detailed treatment or something like that they never went with for some reason. And then uh, when they did this, which was supposed to be, I think in the original, I could be wrong, but in the initial drafts, I believe this was intended to be a sequel with Seraphine's mom supposed to be Alex Price from the
Mm,
original. But for some reason they just kind of dropped that plot point. And then this one, I don't think it did too well. Plus the critical reception to it. I mean, as you just talked about, you and Sean brought up Rotten Tomatoes. Um, Clearly, critics hated it. Um, I think now would be a good time to kind of do an American Werewolf follow up. Um, as long as they do practical effects. But over the last couple of years, they've been kind of like focusing on trying to do a remake, which I think is a mistake. I think they should just do. I mean, just like I joked about last week, do the plural version, American Werewolves in London. Go back to the slaughtered lamb, explore more of the slaughtered lamb and the sort of the mentality and the whole uh, the whole focus of what they do there in that town where there's but now there's the two Americans who have been bitten and inflicted and all that, or you could do American Werewolf and insert country here. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um, I
that's
don't
why I
know, but
think that they missed
if
the
they
boat.
do,
You could do an American Werewolf in wherever, like you're saying, and they probably could have made a bunch of these. And I wonder, but I can't say this one ruined it because I mean they had 17 years between this and that.
yeah. But like, I would if they do one right. The thing that I'll be concerned about is that they'll make the same mistakes as Paris, where they're going to learn the wrong lessons from the original. They're going
Or
to
they
try to
could just make it
force the
completely
comedy a little
serious.
too much. They
You
could.
know what
I
I'm
mean, and
saying? Like,
I wouldn't have a problem with. I wouldn't have a problem with it necessarily, but I think the comedy is needed for the original to a certain extent because it is such a tragic and bleak story. Right from the beginning, Jack and David are riding with sheep. They're both dead by the end of the film, and there's a lot of dark stuff that happens in this movie. A lot of fucked up stuff. As far as like David's nightmares and all that, and I think the comedy kind of like it kind of helped make it a little bit more entertaining. But again, the comedy never overshadowed the horror in the original, and so if they do another one, I would hope that they would show some restraint on the comedy side. You could have some comedy in there, have it be with the characters, the personality. I would hope that they would get a writer who could write good, witty dialogue, and get actors who can kind of have that sort of casual banter and that the uh, chemistry of David and Jack. You know what I mean? Um, but I'm just afraid that if they do another one, I think they're going to push the comedy too much. Probably get CGI, which would be a shame. But I don't know.
I don't know. CG is better now though than it was, and I think that in that case they could learn from what the mistakes from this movie. I think they could. I mean, you look at it; it's a 7%. I don't. Let me. I meant to look up the box office because I'm curious how this did in the box office. But I think they. I mean, this could be looking. I mean, when making another movie, they could definitely look at this as a failure. It was $26 million on a budget of 25, so it didn't do that great. 26 is a lot for them too. But you know what I'm saying? Like I feel like they could be like, okay, we did the CG werewolf thing, the comedy didn't land. How can we not fall into that trap again? You know. So if I were a producer on a movie like this, a sequel like this, those are the things I would look at. Hopefully they would, but who knows? Who knows if they'll ever even make one? Because
Well, another
straightforward
thing too
horror
is like
remake.
I mean, I don't think there was anyone involved from London with Paris. I mean, it was even a completely different studio that distributed it. I don't even know if any of the same producers were involved. Yeah.
I agree. I think that Friday 13 Part 3 is far better than this, but I still don't like Friday 13 Part 3 that much. American Werewolves in London, yeah. So it's got some good ideas. People should start listening to them more. I agree. I prefer werewolves to vampire. I mean, vampires to werewolves. But anyway, so
Yeah. Vampires.
they bite. Oh, get it? Because they bite.
I like
So
vampires, but vampires are just so easy to do, and they're just I don't know, they're so overdone.
yeah, I mean, says the guy who's almost getting close to 100 werewolf movies watched. But
There's probably 1,000 movies just named Dracula, and then there's other vampire movies too.
hey, come on, respect. There's probably 5,000 movies named Dracula.
Oh,
Come
I was
on.
minimizing.
Yeah. Um, so next week we'll be shifting gears a little bit. I believe is it Lord of Illusions next week or is it the week after? I can't remember which is which. Lord of
It's
Illusions
next
is
week.
next week. So yeah, this will be next week's episode. Clive
Can't wait
Barker's
for
Lord
that
of
one.
Illusions, way better movie than what we're talking about here today.
Yes.
And I definitely suggest checking this out if you
Totally.
haven't seen it. I know that we say that about a lot of movies, but this one, trust me, is actually good. It's available if you are able to stream on Max. You can rent it from Vudu or YouTube or Redbox or something like that. But it's definitely worth checking out. I own it from Scream Factory. I do like this movie, and it's one of those that kind of snuck up on me. I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. So I'm looking forward to talking about that, and we got to get a slash score from our followers on that because we don't have one yet. Did you like this one, right? I mean, you've seen it, I think. You're a Clive Barker fan. You had to have
Yeah,
seen it.
I love Lord of Illusions. It's got
Mm,
like one bad CGI moment, but other than that, I
yeah,
think it's a great movie.
and that's the early '90s CGI too, like the
Yeah,
really bad Lawnmower Man esque CG in that movie, but
yeah,
that's forgivable because it's not the main crux of the movie, you know. Um, there's
yeah,
Howling Six with the werewolf in a van. That's true. But then the week after that,
yeah.
this is how we close out our year. Going into 2024, Life Force, speaking of vampires, going into 2024, we're going to try to format the show a little bit differently. Uh, we're going to do our slash scores and how we feel and everything, but I want to have a couple segments like Seth, I think, going forward into 2024, because we're starting with Child's Play, one of your favorite franchises overall. You're going to be doing this. You'll be doing that. And I think I'm going to come up with questions.
Not a bad question, Bert.
It's not a bad question. I'm just asking questions. But I want to get into doing some of these. We were trying to do those with Discourse, and it kind of just fell by the wayside. And I have no idea what's going to happen with Discourse, if it's even going to come back or not. Nate's recovering from the surgery right now, so and I'm not going to bother him with that stuff. So, Seth, you do recommend this to others, yes?
No, I don't. Um, I was.
I did not expect that. Okay.
I would say, proceed with caution. If you love the original, or even if you madly like the original, um, if you watch an American Werewolf in Paris for the first time, have really low expectations. Don't.
I'm going to scratch my back with an old COVID test. Anyway, yeah. I don't really recommend anybody to watch this either. My 14-year-old son was laughing at it, and not for the right reasons. I do, on the other hand, recommend this War of Dracula. So that picture's been on here for like that, and this one have been on here for like the whole year. I don't know, and I never use this. This is a good one. I mean, he's the White Knight. Anybody who watches the
You got
show,
to keep
please
the
hit the
Ellis one.
subscribe button. We had a big jump in subscribers over the weekend. Thanks for our London show, and we'd like more. It'd be wonderful if somehow, some way, we got another 61. Then we get to 1,600 for the year or for the forever, and then hit us up on Facebook. We do our five-star ratings. And by the way, we did Troll 2 today because I'm going year by year, and well, there you go, Seth. Check your Facebook whenever you're done about the Paris Blu-ray. But I put up Troll 2 because I was in a bad mood and I wasn't going to do it. And I want to see what kind of people give it 5 stars. And 22 people gave it 5 stars. They should be ashamed of themselves. Troll 2 is one of the worst movies ever. And it's not so bad it's good. It's so bad it's fucking awful. And I don't know what these people are thinking. I have stipulations. It says 5 perfection. If they're saying 5 perfection and it's a perfect pile of shit, then they're right. But that's not what that means. So I'm going to do the score real fast and see what it ended up with, because I I'm checking out on these people. They're breaking the whole system. 16. 32.48. All right, so now looking good. Troll 2 is a 50%. It's got a higher score than an American Werewolf in Paris. That's fucked up, people. That is not right. Troll 2 should have the lowest score that we have available, which is 20%. That's the lowest score we can give out on a slash score on the 5-star rating system. You people are out of your mind. The system is broken. No more 5-star ratings. We're done with that. George Kittle, that shit. Seth, anything else you want to say before I have to call GoDaddy and yell at them?
No, man, go straighten out the website.
Yeah, I need to. I'm furious. The website's been acting up for about a month. We were like having one of our best years in views and even content. We have had a lot of great content this year. A couple new writers, and now the website's completely taking a shit, and I don't know why. And our hosting provider, GoDaddy, can't help me for some reason. So I guess it's time to leave hosting providers. But I don't know how messy that'll get. I can't even get to our content, so I can't get in the back end of the website. So really upset about that. But if you subscribe to the Horror Syndicate here on YouTube and follow us on Facebook, that'd make me happier. Check out Sunday night as we would talk about Superman 2, and I think we'll be able to talk about the differences between the Donner cut and the whatever the theatrical cut, I guess, and why Superman had a cellophane shield he could throw at somebody. That's so weird, and how he's responsible for 3 deaths. They bitch about Man of Steel. I'm just saying. Do they not?
And they even fucking laugh about it after.
I know.
Yeah, and Superman and Lois Lane, they both laugh about it after. Meanwhile, Henry Cavill falls to his knees and screams.
General Zod is dead. I'm going to ask you, do you like Superman 2 more than Superman the movie?
I used to. Out of the 2 cuts of Superman 2, I prefer the Donner cut. There's a lot that I love about Superman 2, especially since it's more action-packed than the first one. But every time I rewatch the first one, I'm just like, there's something about this movie, man.
It's got this charm.
I go back and forth. Yeah,
Superman
I go back and forth
kind of
on
magic to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I was watching it the other night.
Yeah, Superman 2 is good. Both cuts, I think, are pretty good. But yeah, I agree with you. The Donner cut's better, but I can't. Just something about, like, I'm watching. I'm like, yeah, this Zod is great. I love Terrence Stamp as Zod. He is so good. But at the same time, it's like I hate Gene Hackman's portrayal of Lex Luthor. I've never liked Gene Hackman's portrayal of Lex Luthor. I'll come right out and say it. And it's kind of worse in this movie because he was good in the first movie, especially when Otis decided to make his own little area. Otisburg.
Otisburg.
Yeah, Otisburg. I love that scene. But anyway, yeah, so Seth and I started on the Rage of Razor channel in 2020 talking about the Superman movies with our defending Superman 4, The Quest for Peace episode. And then we did Superman 3, Man of Steel, Superman Returns. We have not done 2 and 1. So it's been a 3-year journey. And we're almost done finally. And then we're going to be talking about DC animated, maybe some Batman movies at some point, because I'm the Batman guy. He's a Batman guy too, but I'm the Batman guy where he is the Superman guy. And I like Superman as well. So, and he pointed something really cool out that my favorite team's main color is basically Batman's colors for the NFL, the Raiders, and his is the Buffalo Bills, and they're blue and red, and basically Superman's colors. That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So anyway, check us out,
Yeah.
Rage of Razor Retro Outsider on Facebook. If you do that, we will be live doing that. Probably, I'm gonna go with Monday, I think, if that's okay with you from now on, because Sundays are just too busy for me at this point. And plus, if we go back to the I almost said discourse. Well, we can't do Sundays because that's our discourse night. If that happens, so
Mondays work
anyway, that's
perfectly
it.
fine.
Okay, that's it. We will see you next week when we talk about Lord of Illusions. Bye, everybody. Bye.